All right, we're live. Welcome everyone to Table Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, The Bella Gamer, with my co-host, Blue Boy.
Hello.
Try to adjust the music and not blow everyone's ears out. And today, my camera is fucked up because it always is. That light off. Yeah, it's a little dim, but what can you do? Today we're gonna be talking about the one thing tabletops always seem to get wrong. You know what that is, Alex?
I don't think I do.
Well, we'll find out in just a little bit, but first a little small talk. How you doing, Alex?
Man, I've taken a small little step away for YouTube things. It's been busy at work. It's been, I don't know, I've just been like so drained. So all I've done aside from like our anima stuff is I've just been playing Kingdom Come Deliverance. I got very far in the first game and was like, you know what? I know how the story goes after this. Like, the first game's main story is honestly like not a lot happens. It's like I'm gonna just jump to the second one. It's one everyone talks about. Immediate upgrade, so much better of a game, but also this game is kicking my ass because its game start after the prologue is all right, you are now like in your underwear in the middle of town with no money, and you need to get to this wedding so you can talk to a noble. Have fun, figure it out. It's like, fuck, okay. And I've been struggling my way through a game where right now a single bandit encounter could be literally life or death.
I mean, as it should.
Yeah, it's brutal as hell. From what I know, like especially the first game, like you can become overpowered pretty easily. But like I have no armor. A fight is brutal as hell. The only people I've managed to kill, I managed to cheese by like ambushing them. And who boy. But man, it is such like an actually good game. It's very cool. This game that was honestly pretty solid, like 2018 release, where it's like this is a fun open world, like the story's kind of fun, and then the second game it's like, okay, let's give it ham. All the performances and story is like super sick. It's just a sheer upgrade in every single thing. I am surprised this game wasn't recognized by like award stuff, because I think it's one of those games you play and you're like, oh, I get it.
I
I
mean,
understand.
it was. Unfortunately, it released the same year Expedition 33 released.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah,
just
that was
the way of things, unfortunately.
Yeah. Because at the very least, it's like, man, some of these like actors, like the protag and like his best buddy, are like two characters. I'm like, I think they got nominated at least, because they're both very well acted.
Yeah.
And it's fun to play a game that's very much like, no, we're trying to be realistic, and I think a way that doesn't add as much friction as like Red Dead Redemption 2 does. Because that game's very cool, but I think a lot of it is just, I don't like how slow everything is. But then in this game, it's dealing with systems like, okay, if you want to sneak into a house, you got to figure it out because when you open a door, it makes noise. And sometimes a person, if they're not expecting people to come into their home, are like, who the fuck was that? And will come investigate the door opening of their home. That's the type of stealth system you have to deal with.
Right, yeah.
And there are so many things where you're like, oh, this is okay, so it's like building on systems. Like guards can recognize you. So if you do a crime in front of a guard and get away, good job. But then if you wait like a day, he's actually telling his buddies to keep an eye out for you. Or like he'll recognize you specifically, like that NPC will find you. And like you have to deal with the crime system, which has all the fancy medieval punishments. You can get out of most crimes with a branding, like the criminal brand. But if you get caught again for something bad, you'll just get a game over because they're going to execute you. It's very sick. I understand why everyone like talks so much hype on this game.
Yeah, I haven't touched it yet. I haven't. I don't know. It's one. It's just hard for me to do anything because I'm a dad and I have very little time to play anything. But too, I don't know. That kind of, it's like a gaming mood where it's like every once in a while you just have particular games you want to try or play or
Oh yeah.
whatever. And that like Witcher-esque, you know, deep RPG mechanics hasn't been too enticing as of late.
That honestly is something that's been so interesting about this game is like the RPG mechanics for it are really like, I don't want to say shallow because that's not what I mean, but like it's pretty straightforward. Like there's less, you know, you get cool magic gear. It's just there's some like unique swords that are like better than others. There's some armor that's made more expensive, and that's just because better people made it. But like the perks are usually just flat upgrades, and but besides that, it adds a lot of depth because of just dealing with problems is really expressive. Because like I had a teaching moment in the prologue, a lot of teaching moments. Like at the beginning of the game, a lot of your skill choices for the prologue determine what your starting stats are going to be. And I went with like charisma. I said I was an envoy, but then the next reply I made, which was a standard non-check reply, I said something that basically implied I was a soldier of some form after just claiming I was an envoy, and the guy immediately called me out on it. And it's like, oh, okay. So like you actually in a conversation have to pick a good option that doesn't contradict something. Like everything's branching out really interestingly, and how you deal with problems are really open. Like if you approach an NPC with a weapon, oh man, turns out the NPC's not gonna like that, and they're gonna go a little aggro. I had a quest where I was trying to find this girl who was taken of like this big old like murder that happened, and immediately she was being held hostage, and I had to like legitimately defuse a hostage situation, and it was one of the coolest expressions of that encounter. Like that's the thing I find super interesting about the game. There's so many things you can do that are then later rewarded or punished. And like early game, I'm trying to do like speech checks, and everyone keeps calling me out for being a dweeb because I look like a dirty beggar and I have nothing to my name. Because it's like, yeah, I was left in my underwear and I've just picked off these clothes from corpses. Like I haven't been able to do much. I already dumped like I want to say like 8 or something hours into it. I've made 9 hours and I've made very little progress in the best way possible. That's the type of game I can say. If you're in the mood for a very long experience that rewards you from not treating it like a video game. Because I think the prologue does a very good job beating that into your head of like, do not approach this like it is a game. Approach this like it is a life simulator. And you will like get farther.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. Though, there is a game, RPG, kind of... I don't know if it's similar, because honestly, I think Kingdom Come Deliverance's whole, like, idea is it's kind of medieval simulator.
Yeah, it's trying to be very, like, honest to the time period.
But, Crimson Desert is sounding like fantasy GTA, which is very interesting.
Which is what I'd also say is a great representation of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Because there's a lot of encounters where you're like, this is so, like, GTA at its peak. Like, it's got great humor to it, but, like, I'm so hyped for Crimson Desert. Because in that game, it feels like it's going the opposite direction. It's because, from what I've heard from people who've touched the game and, like, played it so far, the story isn't anything too crazy. Like, it is a justification for you being there. But then it's rewarding you for exploring all of the many different gameplay systems it's adding. Which is also sick. I love that too.
And Immortal, we'll begin to the topic in just a bit. We're letting people hop into the chat before we get to the subject. But if you want to know what type of games, obviously TTRPGs, as this is a TTRPG channel.
We're just talking about video games just because basically what I've been doing. I've been in a mood it hasn't left, which I'm so happy for how this year is kind of going. I've been in the mood for very open games because it feels like ever since playing Skyrim when it like came out and like over the years, uh, there's just a Skyrim shaped hole in my heart where I'm like, I want a game that really feels like you can explore every little nook and cranny. Because you get a bunch of those games, but they don't have the same feeling to it. Uh, because like the closest is Tainted Grail because it's the same genre. I think just with a really cool setting and better, a little like better gameplay. And then Tears of the Kingdom, which came out years ago, and now it's like, okay, we have Crimson Desert, uh, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 feels like that, and then later at the year Fable, which looks really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I feel about Fable yet. I just haven't seen anything that seems too interesting. The only thing that's carrying Fable is the fact that it's Fable. But like,
Yeah,
it's a revamp of Fable. So,
which I'll take. Like I played Fable 1 and Fable 3. I've never played the second one.
I played all the Fables. I actually really like them. The thing though, that like the old Fables really had going for it was just the whole like actions have consequences kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like there's no body morphing in this, so you can't eat a bunch and become fat or super skinny or anything like that. You can't grow horns, can't get a halo, all that kind of stuff, which isn't bad. I'm not saying that's the bad part. I'm just saying that like one of the charms, especially the first Fable game, was just how moldable your character was around some of your choices and everything. And
yeah, because like I think it would be really fun if there was still some expression of that, because I understand with like what they're trying to build why getting the halo or the horns is not super feasible with what they're wanting, but like the other aspects where it's like, yeah, if your character overeats and you make them a little paunchy, that sounds like a fun expression of just your character.
Yeah. Well,
my hope is that maybe they'll have like a cosmetic or like a potion or something that'll maybe be a fun reference. But you know, that's wishful thinking.
yeah, I mean, again, that's not like why I would play Fable. But
yeah,
the thing is like there were these special doors, secret doors that you had to get through in the first game. And the only way you could do some of those doors is to like be super evil, be super good, or be really fat, you know? And
yeah.
And it just had a much more whimsy, like child books, storybook style of expression that was fun. That was kind of like the point.
Yeah, you're playing like a goofy fairy tale is usually the tone.
Mm-hmm.
And like it usually has that fun kind of like I mean, it makes sense why in Fable 3, for example, they have John Cleese, like, because the games do have that Monty Python kind of like very absurdist humor, which, I mean, I'll say, I've seen people criticize it. I think framing your main quest like a mockumentary, like, type of, like, sitcom show is funny. Like, I could see that working, and, like, also I saw Richard Ayoade, and I was like, ah, hell yeah, I love him.
Mm-hmm.
And like I like the idea of trying something very alien to like gaming, and it could be a failed experiment on like that framing for a story, or it could just be fun and charming.
I don't know. So like I haven't seen any gameplay mechanics that I'm particularly interested in. It seems like their largest focus is, hey, we're Fable. Period.
like in the Fable, like definition of what Fable wanted to be is like a living, breathing fantasy world, and it wouldn't be it'd actually be a little alien to Fable, to be honest, in its history, if all of the promises they made in the marketing were true. But if they at least succeed in the market, in the idea of we have created a like simulated fantasy world where you can kind of go into a town and do whatever. Because I do like that idea of each NPC has their own individual opinions of you and like lives they're leading, and you can just do what you want. uh like that aspect I think is fun, and I think that the morality of yeah, I mean, they're not gonna, all the entirety of Albion isn't gonna learn that you punched a guy in the face like at the same time. So like you could just be an absolute dickhead in one town, and the next town they're like, I don't really know who this guy is, word hasn't traveled that far for like your minor shit. So it is a game I'm curious about, but Crimson Desert is the big one where I'm like, this is probably just gonna be sick.
Yeah,
I've seen less reason to be worried about that game.
that game, I mean, it looks like fantasy Red Dead Redemption. Just you go around, all this kind of crazy stuff. There's a whole world that's just been seeded with all kinds of interesting adventure and all that kind of stuff. And it has BDO combat, which is just really, really good game combat. Probably it's crazy how little this combat has been like properly used in literally anything. And like a single player experience, I think, is like a perfect way of making Black Desert Online's combat just like even better than it was in the game. So who knows?
It's the type of thing where it feels like they've made a combat system from just what we've seen where you're going to find what you find most fun, and you're not going to be like locked away from oh man, you're going all physical, so bows are going to be a little tougher. It's like, no, it looks like I can just pull that shit on the fly and then suplex a boss as a counter move. The moment I saw that, I'm like, oh my god, I'm totally gonna play an in your face, like I'm throwing you, I am like countering you, I'm going all in. And then maybe I roll in with a mech suit, who knows? Because what the hell, why not?
Yeah, I don't know. It looks interesting, so I'll
Yeah.
probably check it out as well. That's a good year for big games for me already, because I've been excited for Code Vein 2. Monster Hunter Stories 3 comes out in March. Neo 3 comes out next month, and I may check that out. I don't know. I don't know if I have enough time for so many like in-depth games. Plus, I've been playing Arknights Enfield because I'm a big Arknights fan. Though I don't know how I feel about Enfield. It just feels like what made Arknights really interesting is like it's like the only tower defense gacha out there, so it's interesting for that fact. But also the lore behind it is actually really deep and intense and crazy, and I really like it. But I haven't played enough of Enfield to know, so we'll see. But
Yeah, I think I've seen ads for it, but that's about all I've got.
it's just Genshin Impact, but with a different brand. That's honestly what it is. But let's talk about TTRPGs. So I asked you earlier what you think the number one thing most of the games get wrong. Now,
Yeah.
obviously this is going to be somewhat subjective because it is something that like you may disagree with the overall principle or idea of what constitutes a TTRPG. But for me, one of the things that most games really get wrong is the proper marriage of game mechanics and narrative like implementation. And what I mean by this is the whole point of a TTRPG in the first place is to tell interesting stories about the characters. But most games take a route of make some stats, here's your playable mechanical character, now tell a story with that. Very few games actually implement a lot of impactful narrative elements into character creation or even how your character generally works.
Yeah, it feels like it's a system that's built to be very open in that way of if we give you low tools for this, if the players that don't want to engage with that super hard and are playing it more wargamey or tactical or dungeon crawlery, like they don't have extra shit they have to deal with, And then on the other hand, it's then like it appeals to the players who are that type of fuck the book, I'll tell the story how I want to, less rules please. When like you can't just get the happy medium and marrying those together, or even bake it into character creation. Like I don't like the system that much, but I think Seven Rings is one of the coolest and best like character creation processes I've done. Like I really like how that's orchestrated.
Funny enough, Legend of the Five Rings is one of the games that does it the best, because the stats in Legend of the Five Rings, the rings in question, they're not about like character stats. They're more about your character's approaches to the situations. So each of the rings are like, if you're using fire for a check, it's because you're doing something that's passionate or filled with emotion, or you're moving in a chaotic or erratic fashion, you know, if it's combat and everything like that. Each of the rings implies narrative just by the fact that you're using that ring in the first place for a check, which is really cool. Now, to be fair, I do like more like traditional stats because it's something that you can more work off of. It doesn't make sense to me that I am better at a skill not because I have innate like traits and abilities towards it, but because I'm just extra passionate or extra, serene, or like composed. But the whole point of Legend of the Five Rings is that you're playing a competent samurai. So your skill is implied. All samurai who are being accepted are really, really skilled at what they're doing. And it's more about the story of your approach. And Legend of the Five Rings, I think, honestly marries the two concepts probably better than most. They still don't do it 100%, but I like how they just... The very system of the rings is narrative and implies how your character does things, which is cool. It is interesting. Though it then boils down to every character is one of 5 personality types, essentially, which is, kind of the problem with a system like that. But honestly, in this conversation, it's one of the better games, funny enough.
Yeah, like, I think that's a reason why some devs might avoid it, because they can't find a solution to that issue. Because if you have it like that, then like marrying together personality and all this, it's leaving up to the players to look at that and be like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna play something different. I'm gonna play a little against type. Otherwise, sometimes when a game feels like it's trying to tell you, hey, this is how you're playing your character. Here's your character's personality you built. It's like, cool, I guess. Depends how people would engage with it. But, because I know that's not something we'd ever do, or many players who do like that roleplay aspect. They're going to form the character they have in their heads. But I think that issue of, like, setting things up to be, then characters have a very similar personality archetype, I think that's a thing some devs are wary of. Even more wary if it's the same deal I think we talked about last week, of players just ignoring it. So what's the point of putting it in the first place?
I mean, kind of, yeah. I don't know if many devs are watching out for it. It's a pretty unique mechanic, and it's something that, like, is hard to recreate, because Legend of the Five Rings, like, the idea behind that is how you play your character is important, because you're playing a samurai, essentially.
Yeah.
But most games, one, are based off loosely D&D, where you roll up stats, here's your thing, now play a character in the world. Like, the idea is, all right, we're playing individual characters in a war game, and so they have their stats, but we're gonna role play the how and why of it. Which, is, I'm not saying is a bad way to do TTRPGs. In fact, you can have core systems that are, purely mechanical and statistical. The problem with it is a lot of these games then add narrative by, like, structuring how some choices you add to your character sheet like are. So for instance, in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, some of the ways you can add flavor to your character, because in Pathfinder you only play like a class, and if you multi-class you're only taking like parts of another class and adding it to your character. But how you can add a little bit of flavor is like picking archetypes for your character. So the archetypes give you some additional features, and a lot of the archetypes have narrative behind them. You know, you're getting these features because you've trained as like a butterfly sword assassin or whatever, you know. Which is something that I don't like when games are just like, here's a character option that is tied specifically to a thing and that's it. Like the mechanics of the thing are then just a different way of using a sword, or all of them themselves are like almost purely mechanical. Now Pathfinder does have some archetypes specifically that are like way more narrative, way more about telling the story than it is about like the mechanical effects. But it's something that a lot of games like D&D is especially really bad for this. There's just like no options, no mechanics, there's nothing in the game that imply narrative for your character. You as the player have to come up with why your character is interesting, or why they are whatever, you know. Like it what's even worse is that like so many of the classes in these games really imply something about your character, the narrative behind your character. Like wizards in D&D traditionally have to study for years and years to even be a wizard, which there's a lot of times that just kind of gets ignored, but like that was the idea. But there's no mechanic that reinforces that. There's nothing on about your character that really implies any such thing. And so it's hard. But you know what game kind of does this a little bit better? Anima Beyond Fantasy.
Yeah. Like that's one where like there are certain options in that with Anima and how broad it is that I feel like you could play it in that way of the choices I make are pure optimal. There's nothing influencing my character. And then there's the choices you can make that are, I'm picking this for flavor. There's so much I could do with it. I mean, my character in Anima, like, I could make him way more broken for ki, but I decided the unoptimal route of making myself famous and making it so I can level up science efficiently. Like, those are not optimal decisions to make. It's narrative decisions. I wouldn't call them I'm being given a narrative tool in my mechanics, but I am expressing a character mechanically, which is something like the choice. Having that choice is great.
Fame is a narrative tool because it is something that only gives you benefit based on the narrative of what's going on. You know, your character is famous, and that's a thing you can use, and your character has used. But there's no mechanical, like, all right, you walk into a room, roll to see how many people know who you are, or anything like that.
Yeah, I think it affects just like charisma checks or something.
No, it's just like, who knows you.
Yeah. I mean, like, hey, I pick it. I'm famous, but like, Anima is that type of game where I think it lands what I think a lot of these other systems want their narrative and mechanical overlap to be. Where I do think like Anima's has a lot where it's up to you to pick how deep you want to go with it. Because like it is a game that I mean you see it all the time in forum stuff. It's just the people optimizing the game.
Yeah.
Which that's just any tabletop game with like crunch to it to be also fair. But by giving you so many tools and so many very specific tools, it hits that point that I think Pathfinder 2 is trying to go with archetypes, where like the archetypes I like as a mechanic because it's doing a thing I think is important in tabletop games where you open your book, you can read through stuff, and if you see an archetype and you're like, "Oh shit, I want to play that. I actually want this character to be like an archaeologist." And like provoked that story because of that in that archetype, sick, that does well. I want to play a Mantis Blade assassin, like, which to be fair, I kind of do too. I really like that archetype.
Right,
It's
yeah.
very fun. Uh, and like the Mantis Blades are sick, and like that's a way you can tie it in really fun to Galarian. Uh, but it is a lot of the times in practice, man, half of these archetypes are kind of mechanically useless. I could just pick like these standard ones and suddenly I'm like way better at what I do instead of expressing my character differently. And then Anima has that where it's just like, shit, man, you can make basically any power system you want. Go crazy. You're going to make something that's super unique to you.
Yeah, and Terrence, I kind of get what you're getting. Sometimes it's like flavor options are really cool, but depending on the game, it's like, hey, you pick a flavor choice that could have been a thing that actually makes your character like better or more survivable. And to be fair, that's relevant to your game, right? If you're playing a hardcore dungeon crawling game, that game is inherently not orientated towards roleplay, and so they could just be dead choices because it's like, when do they come up? And that's a big part of narrative-based mechanics as well, is especially when you have something that's so just narrative, like Fame, because you know it's as relevant as the DM makes relevant.
Yeah.
So you don't know what you're getting as part of the package.
Like, it is, I think it's the danger of some roleplay decisions. Because there's the mechanical version of this that I think is the best example of it when it's implemented poorly, and that's good old 5th edition Ranger, where there are so many choices you get at character creation that can express your character's backstory. Where like, this is my favorite hunting ground. These are the enemies I'm the most aware of. Like those choices are actually literally one of the only ones I can think of when it comes to D&D that you make in the game. And then a common bit is how useless those choices are, because yeah, congrats, man, you picked forest. Too bad the campaign takes place in a desert.
Yeah,
it's like that type of thing where you need to basically ask the GM, hey, what relevant thing is actually going to come up in the game, and you have to do it like that. And so you're not expressing your character, you're making a mechanical choice based off of meta knowledge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if it was like you were to build your character around the idea, what the problem with the Ranger really boils down to is tracking is not a necessary skill, because when tracking is necessary, a group has a binary: do we have tracking? Yes, no, okay, story doesn't or does proceed. And that's bad. So tracking rarely comes up as like incredibly helpful, because there's few times where tracking is just like either 100% necessary or 0% necessary.
I'd also argue just in general, a lot of those survival skills are the same way, to where it's basically like, oh, so we just now don't have to worry about rations? Cool. So it doesn't come up in the narrative or like in the game that much unless you want to roleplay each time me going hunting, and the ability is like a guaranteed you have food for the day. Because I think that's a thing Rangers get. Maybe. I don't remember. Either way, Goodberry does the same shit for magic casters. Yeah. But like there's choices like that where it is I'm turning off this like light piece of narrative friction that could come up. The key point is could. Where I feel like with Ranger, what could be really fun is if, mechanically speaking, the choices meant a little more, and so maybe even you could intentionally tell the story of hey, what's up guys, I'm a ranger, I'm really familiar with like the forest, and now I need to adjust for like the desert. Oh, whoa. Like, that'd be a fun narrative to tell. How do those survival skills transfer? And instead you're like, well, my class features are kind of just not applicable, so I'm somewhat more of just a worse fighter with a bow.
Yeah. I mean, it's really fun if that's like the idea going into the game. It's just like, all right, your group like the point of the story is your monsters attacking the town. So protagonist character goes around and tries to find people who can help with this, and they need a tracker. They have to have a tracker to do the story, and so they get the ranger player, and that's like the important thing, is like that's what they need, which is good. Like, you can have a campaign set up around the idea of the characters and building off of it. That's a really fun idea. The problem is in D&D and in Pathfinder as well, the ranger could just roll real garbage with their tracking and actually just fail the check that they're there for, while
Yeah.
the rogue, who's just like, yeah, I took some tracking, why not, could roll really, really good. And or even just a character who has no tracking like whatsoever but just rolls really better. The numbers don't mean enough, where a character with tracking is honestly that much better than a character without.
You could just have a good wisdom or perception score in general. Like, what's stopping you? What's stopping the rogue from filling your spot, basically? Uh, I actually really like that idea for a campaign start, to be honest, because like, people out there, if you're struggling, that could be a really fun one of like, have a player who's down for the initial spotlight that is someone who's like gathering up people. Because I'm such a sucker for my favorite types of campaign starts are the ones that are like everyone gets together and meets on session one, because I really love the party vibes, that like the relationships that grow naturally through roleplay. And I love just these people are only together because of like sheer circumstance, and like they started hanging out and realized, oh shit, like these are friends or found family. I always really love that.
Yeah. uh but there's another TTRPG out there that actually kind of does this idea a bit better, and we played it before.
Hmm.
You know what game I might be talking about?
I'm rolling through my head of all the like Five Rings is the one I can think of. Uh,
But for, say, for like a mechanic or something where it's just like, I'm a ranger, I can do this one thing really, really well, but this game doesn't require skill checks for it.
your game.
Cosmere,
Oh yeah, with the expertise. That's it.
the specialty system, yeah.
I do like that. That's a good mechanic to have.
It is. I really like it. And that is a narrative mechanic. That is something that I really enjoy, because in Cosmere, you get very few of these kind of like specialties, but they are 100% checks. They're a thing that, well, not always, but they can be 100% checks, or they can give you access to a role that you might not have been able to roll before because your character lacked the specific like ability or context to look into it. When we played our Stonewalkers game, our one of our players had a scouting expertise, and that came up like a few number of times during the campaign, and was
It's a useful
very
skill,
handy.
especially because the campaign is literally you're following a guy.
Hmm. And that is exactly essentially what a ranger's for. And so, like, in the Cosmere RPG, I feel like classes like the ranger can just generally function better for what they're doing, because just by the grace that they automatically succeed checks on certain things. And
Yeah, like I think that's a, if anything, it's more of our question of when is failure good or bad, because I also think in our experience that's something a lot of games just get wrong. I think is
yeah.
going with a very old mindset of doing action equals dice check, which a lot of times, like for games, you have to manage it of the GM needs to have a restraint on when they ask for it, but also there's just some dice systems in games that lend itself worse to it. D20 is just the one that's really stuck around with. Oh man, I'm picturing Pathfinder with an expertise system that isn't just like, oh yeah, you have a feat, so if you roll better. So that's usually how it lands in that game of if you fail, you actually don't fail, or if you crit fail, you just fail. And it's like, what if I could avoid the roll though? But then you avoid critting, so
Yeah, but that can be a choice. A success versus auto success versus chance to crit. I mean, Pathfinder has that with its assurance, so
that's true. I think I think that maybe a fun home rule would be if your stat is just so much higher than like for standard stuff, you just have assurance baked in. Like assurance is a free skill that isn't a feat pick. It is a thing you get by having the stat good enough.
But going back to like Cosmere and its specialty system, that is like a perfect example of a narrative mechanic. It allows you to have skills that are not 100%, but you can invest in them, try to be better at them or whatever. And at the same time, you can have these expertises which you functionally choose. They're mechanically chosen on your character sheet through either your abilities or due to your character's high intelligence, that allow you to more automatically succeed, or at least be more specialized for very niche types of checks, which tell a story. Your character's expertises are important to your character's overall narrative. And while the game also kind of has the messy business of allowing you to have things like weapon expertises and armor expertises that give you some extra functionality with those things, which I like the idea of it. It's just, there's just going to be players who are not going to know what they want to narratively do with their character for the other expertises, and so just choose the mechanically like pretty much only choices for armor and weapons and such like that really don't tell a lot about their character. I mean, they do, but they kind of don't at the same time, Like, I'm really good with a rapier. That's can be a part of your character's story, true. But if you're just selecting it because you don't want to think harder about your character's overall narrative, or you just can't think of a niche skill choice use, then, it probably isn't that important to you if you're just, that's the reason why you're selecting it, so.
Yeah, you're picking it on a whim. Or just, largely, you're picking it for that mechanical bonus, like, it's the negative will give anima. I'll say that a lot of the weapons are kind of just damage number.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not much else. There's the small trade-off of like initiative, but like a lot of times it's, if I'm going for a thing, maybe I'm like, I'm not going super crazy into initiative. I'm not going super crazy and like trying to have a fast or slow. Longsword is just one of the better picks you can make.
Yeah.
Because it's just really good, really easy to utilize, and it has like a 80 base damage. Meanwhile, it's like, yeah, why would I pick like an axe or something? Like, what else does this change for me? What's the difference between picking a short sword? Maybe it's like slightly faster, but like I can invest in that in a different way.
Yeah.
I like that for Pathfinder. I like that the weapon choices are really like, I have to make a legitimate choice if I'm like, okay, I want to use a polearm. Which polearm do I use? I think it's like a really fun choice to make.
Yeah, I really like it. I mean, I don't mind necessarily if games kind of just reduce weapons down to a weapon group and just call it good, Like, all swords function relatively the same, all daggers function relatively the same. Because in a lot of games, that's just kind of like how it works, and you just pick the one that has the better damage number anyway.
Yeah.
But, Pathfinders is good. I wouldn't say it's a narrative choice, but at the very least, mechanically speaking, it's way more satisfying than almost any other game.
I think it's one of those bits where it's the, if the player puts more into it. Because, like, I think that's the intention of the stuff with, like, ancestry weapons. Where it's, especially if you're reaching over to another ancestry and grabbing their unique shit, uh no mace, but having that thing of okay, you're really reaching to get this advanced weapon, or you're really reaching to get this like ancestry weapon. Why do you have this? When sadly a lot of people's answers could just be, well, it has the best like effects and damage number, like
Yeah,
the flick mace. But like
the
uh
gnome
it,
flick
it
mace. Yeah,
it can make some fun choices there. Like I think having I think a fun way of going about it is that uncommon or advanced weaponry. Having that, I think, is tying in your character is something different. You have access to this thing that just isn't common, is rare. How did you get access to that? I think that's a very fun narrative choice you can tie in. I think it's the closest you get to it.
yeah,
Anything else is just how much of a fighter dork are you that you can turn fighter into a narratively interesting class.
right.
Which like I love doing. That's my shit. Because I like doing stuff I do anyways, and then I love it when a game rewards me for the behavior I was already planning on doing.
Yeah, and by no ways am I inferring by any of this that like someone who can take stats and numbers and tell a good story with that is bad in any way, or that it's bad to have games that have numbers in it, because that's silly in the first place. It's more of just like there are ways you can blend these mechanics seamlessly where you can have a lot of narrative implication with mechanical effects. One of the things I plan on implementing for the game I'm designing, and probably for games I'm running in the future as well in general, is a evidence like factor or number requirement, where if you want to convince someone of something, you need to provide them some kind of evidence to that effect. So I was talking with a friend the other day about it, and it's like, okay, Bard wants to seduce the dragon. It's the one kind of thing that like a lot of GMs just shake their head at, because they're either gonna be like, no, you can't, or sure, I'll let you roll, but you gotta get a nat 20, completely up to chance. But with an evidence-based system, what you can do is you can have the Bard be like, hey, dragon, like the dragon has so many evidence point requirements. You need to provide so many points of evidence, essentially, in order to convince it to be your partner.
Yeah, you need to like show that you're, a good partner, that you can support them in their time of need. Like you have to put up the groundwork. You can't just roll dice and be like, yeah, I guess we're together.
Right. I mean, it doesn't have to be that much. It could just be something more silly. Like the Bard could be like, hey, dragon, I literally own a castle. I have a lot of wealth, and that could be one of the points for the dragon. The dragon might have like 4 or 5. It's a dragon after all. And it's not just about like convincing them. It's about like actually, like some of it can be like a convincing argument could be a point, where another one is like you have to provide some kind of like actual evidence that they can see. Like, you see that castle over there? That's my castle. You can see its banners are the same as the one I'm wearing on my shirt, or I know one of your other dragon friends, and I've had good relations with dragons in the past. It's a system that forces the player to interact and contextually affect the world. You have to go to a character, you have to talk reasonably in the scene, and you have to provide evidence like a real person would. And what the evidence points does is it makes it where you have a very clear, concise, the player knows what they need to do, and they're not putting in a lot of effort for no reason. So like a player might know an NPC is hard to negotiate with, and so if they feel like they have a lot of evidence, that's something they can feel more confident in the engagement, rather than just like, a system where they don't even know if the character would even accept in the first place.
I also think there's the element of this where it allows non-charisma characters to handle charisma stuff, because like if it's in that position of well, yeah, I actually have like all this evidence for it, so there's the surefire, this should be an easy slam dunk convince, but then it's like Yeah, but I'd like for you to roll a 15 to achieve that, though. This can just let players utilize a different skill set to achieve a similar challenge.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, I still think like how a thing is presented matters, but it allows it where if a player is doing really well in a scene and just being very convincing and providing lots of evidence to the NPC, it just allows the GM to be like, okay, yeah, you succeed. You provided so much extra evidence that more than they would have even needed that you do so. And it's something that, like, again, it reflects reality. If someone comes up to you and be like, hey, I need your car, but right now I'm going to write you up a check for like $1 million. Here, scan this with your phone, and when it goes through, I'm going to take your car. That's very convincing, and I think people would be very hard pressed to like not sell their car for $1 million. You know,
like hell yeah, like, I'd take that in a heartbeat. I think it lays up also because there's it's a gamey kind of thing when it comes to tabletop games. Of sometimes you're just in that position where you're like, I have this guy dead to rights. Like I have the video recording of you there. You were here at the scene of the crime, blah, like all that. And then it's just like, yeah, and you laid out this fantastic argument, fantastic point. And then at the end, because you failed the stat check, character's like, no, nuh-uh. Is it more realistic in a way to have a character be endlessly stubborn? Because that happens. Like, yeah, of course, sure. But there is like a game element that makes that really unsatisfying. Of like, I did literally all this work. I've set up so much. I've won in every single thing, but I'm roadblocked by, right at the end, a single arbitrary check.
Yeah.
When instead that could just be like, no, you nailed that.
Yeah, like you provided so many evidence points past the requirement that you just auto succeed because they're overly convinced. And the thing is as well, this could also be used for like intimidation, you know, because some of the most intimidating characters in media are not physically imposing, but instead they're characters who demonstrate their power to, you know, make someone's life miserable.
Shout out to Silco, who's probably the best example of that I've
seen.
Just the most menacing guy ever, but he doesn't seem like it physically.
He's a very string bean kind of character, yeah.
The one I immediately think of is the one where like there's that guard captain guy who's like thinking of double crossing him, opens his home and Silco's with his daughter.
Yeah.
It's just that of like, yeah, he's immediately reminding you of like what's at stake. I will be back in a quick second, like just a minute.
So this is something that is missing for a lot of TTRPGs, and yeah, Terrence, you're exactly right. It's the blending that's the crux. A lot of games, though, don't provide even the tools to really implement this. It's not necessarily about why. It's about, you know, like why some players are good and why some players are bad. This is my hobby. This is the thing that I do for a living. And so I can think about it for extended periods of time. But, like, there's games out there that just intuitively give a certain amount of mechanical benefit for good roleplay. A lot of mechanical benefit for how your character does a thing or why the character does a thing that matter and are valuable. And Legend of the Five Rings is a really good example of this, because the Five Rings, while they are like a mechanical tool, sure, you get to roll one of the rings only based on how your character does a thing. So your character describes to the GM how you'd perform a task, and the GM will tell you which of the rings your task most aligns with. You know, if you're trying to give a very rousing speech, it can be based on either fire or earth, depending on if you're showing a lot of dependability and stoking everyone's discipline and, you know, setting everyone up as the bedrock of the country, or if you're trying to ignite their emotions, make everyone really fall in line and make everyone like passionate about what's going to happen. There's a lot of situations like that where sometimes a player does something in game and they don't align with their rings really well, and thus they end up using a stat they're less good at, but that's the thing that will reinforce to that player, okay, I need to really get into the mindset of my character based on the rings I've more aligned myself with. It kind of self-corrects where you might stub your toe on it a little bit, but I feel like once you practice, once you kind of get into it and you play the game more and more and more, you're going to start better demonstrating characters, because you're going to have, funny enough, as samurai, a lot better control over your character's actions and emotions, so you can roll the right rings for what you want to do. And there's just not enough TTRPGs out there providing anywhere near enough options that are narratively important to your characters as well as mechanically important to the game. And there's a lot of base mechanics that are really just not being properly addressed, and in ways cheapen the experience. The fact that social checks even exist in games with no extra like criteria to them is really bad, actually, for most TTRPGs, because a social check implies only that a stat is required to do something socially in a game, where combat is a bunch of social checks, true, but at the very least, combat has so many levels of things you can do, strategies, techniques, tactics, all that kind of stuff, where even how you just do combat can be narrative, but a conversation doesn't have all those layers, and thus it devolves down to, is stat good? Yes, no, okay, proceed. You know, some GMs are really good about just being like, yeah, what you said was convincing. I'm not even going to make you roll. What you said convinced the person. But there's no guidelines in the game to get to that point.
It is a boring thing when combat is interesting because of all the mechanics at play, and you can utilize so much. And then another thing just being like, yeah, well, your number's bigger than the other number, so like, congrats. Like, that is a little boring. When it's more fun to demonstrate how your character can do it. You know what? I'm thinking about it. It's at least something. Shout out to Pathfinder for having, like, if I'm a character that's like a bold-faced liar, I've really went hard into deception, I like the little abilities that modify how deception can be used. Like, I like the idea of catching someone with deception because you're also good at deception. Like, elements like that I think are really interesting. Just modifying it in that way, I'll give at least those. I think the skill feats are pretty fun for Pathfinder, and like trying to give itself some more narrative stuff. I wish there were more.
Yep, same. Yeah, and I mean, like, this goes so much deeper in general than just, you know, do I have a specialty so I'm always good at a particular type of skill? So many of these, you know, very narrative heavy games don't really have systems for players interacting with NPCs in meaningful ways, you know. And I'm not talking about just like having skill checks or whatever. It's like there's a lot of the time where it can simply be I want to be friends with someone of importance in a particular organization, you know, or even like people you knew before you were an adventurer. Like, if you have connections, they rarely manifest in most games unless the GM puts in a lot of effort. Now, a game that does this really well is Vampire, because one of the advantages you can take is connections. And your connections, you can gain new connections through the story, and that's kind of a huge part of Vampire. A lot of being a vampire is who you know rather than how good you are at sucking blood. So,
yeah. Like, the game itself is meant to have a lot of social elements.
it's something that they're like, Vampire has uh, a lot of really good narrative based mechanics. It doesn't provide some of the best guidelines, and some of them are not so mechanically integrated into the system where it's obvious to the players what even a particular advantage does. One of the big ones is like, oh goodness, I can't remember what the advantage is called, but it's like your estate or your home, you know, your secret
Oh, having a
base.
haven.
Haven, that's what it is, yeah. Because this is like bigger, more points equals better haven, but we're not going to tell you really much of what that does. Maybe some narrative implications, but like mechanically, players don't want to invest in things that they don't feel like they're going to get use out of. And Haven is kind of one of those ones that like really doesn't come up super often because there's just not a lot of mechanical backbone to it.
Yeah, it's like
All right, see you, Terrence.
Vampire and like WoD stuff especially is really built in that system of we will give you a lot of ways to make the thing you want, but like you the player do the heavy lifting. Like you really want a haven, like you have to be a player that like wants to have a haven and upgrade, kit it out, like because I dug into it because I for 5th edition gave like when I was like thinking of in planning out a campaign, I was like, yeah, okay, here's a haven it to be statted like this because it has this and this, and then like it basically be there's arbitrary bits of you want this thing, well you're gonna have to invest in your haven. I wouldn't be surprised if they have something further in one of the other books, but I haven't seen any in my many delvings. But yeah, it's like Vampire leans a bit more into the into that realm of here's a way to do this thing, but if you want specifics, you're gonna have to come up with that because the answer is roleplay, or like the answer is it doesn't mechanically matter. Much like you use this ability on a mortal, it works. Like so then now it's up to you to determine how does it work, and like what do you say and do all that.
Yeah, and this kind of leans into the other side of things, which is rules light games, because there's a lot of rules light games where most of what you have available on your character sheet are narrative implications of that your character can do things with very little guidelines. Monster of the Week is pretty guilty of this for a lot of things, not everything. Like one of the ones that the expert gets is like Secret Library or whatever, and it gives you a +1 forward for a magic roll in the session. So one magic check, because your character has a private library that they have at home. They could always say like, oh, I read a book about this recently, you know, Avada Kedavra, whatever. And I like a lot of it, how it works in Monster of the Week, but there's a lot of them as well that are kind of just very vague implications of what you can do with them, but it's just like, tell a good story, you know, here's the thing, tell a good story. No mechanical backbone whatsoever, because it's up to you and your GM as to how good this thing is. If for Monster of the Week, that's kind of like the point. It's not a very mechanically intense game, and a lot of it is more just like the narrative. Like, even fighting creatures, technically, when you fight a creature, it doesn't attack you necessarily. You only get damaged when you roll against it, unless the GM uses a variety of like moves or effects during a combat.
Yeah, it is that game design that is in that we like, for the players that do think all these rules get in the way of me playing the game. And like for that element, yeah, it works because like mechanically there's just not a lot happening. But for someone who is very much in that yeah, I get this thing, but more importantly, I have this thing, and then they go full narrative. Just good for them.
Yeah. You know, when we played, I enjoyed thoroughly pulling various things out of my ass as a character, because that's just what the expert is they have a charm, they have a thing for every situation. and it was really fun. I really enjoyed the idea of that character, but there's just a lot of situations in that game where sometimes multiple playbooks have similar features, and the only thing really separating them is how a player interprets theirs, rather than like what it mechanically adds to the game, which makes it difficult. And now I'm gonna say outright, I'm not a very rules light player, like, or well, a person who likes TTRPGs in general. I don't like a lot of rules light because a lot of rules light are just the impressions of a game overlaid with a bunch of just group storytelling stuff. And the few mechanics these games tend to have are only there to add randomness to essentially a group narrative experience, which isn't bad, and it's not bad that people like that kind of thing. But for me, I want what I make to be meaningful and to have value, and I don't want that to be purely value based on how I played it, because like, this might sound rather unhumble, but I'm a really good storyteller in general. I'm just very good at what I do because it's just my hobby. I don't mechanics to tell good stories with my characters, but what separates some of my own characters from each other is how I mechanically put them together as well, and what they could do. And sometimes when you have really good role players, they can just do anything in rules like games because they just are really good at coming up with a story of how they do it, which feels easy mode to someone like me who doesn't need to like think very hard to come up with good reasons or like solutions to problems, you know. Like, I kind of need mechanics to be something that impairs me so that I can work with the game to better tell a more interesting story, and it allows me to not have a character who can do almost anything. Like, I gotta say, in Monster of the Week, my character, besides like pure combat ability, because that just wasn't what he was about, but there's a lot of the situations that we went up against that my character just was probably one of the most effective characters because of how I roleplayed, you know, and because I had just had the tool to pull out anything from my ass in the moment. Like, I improv'd a flamethrower in one of our encounters, which was very handy.
Like, those elements are always handy to that, because then, meanwhile, I built my character for pure damage. So, like, I was effective when I got to roundhouse kick a monster. But, like, a lot of outside stuff like that, it was very, let me figure something out. Because I at least run that line of, I would rather play a rules light game than a game I don't like mechanically. But that's also group dependent. Because, like, if it's thinking of this group, Monster of the Week was hard carried by the fact that, like, I loved our group, the people that are in it, care about them deeply, and enjoy playing tabletop games with them. That, to that extent, one of my, like, most fun roleplay bits was that. Like, I love that roleplay wise. If I had that choice of, like, all right, we're going to do a game together, this same group, but we're either going to play Shadowrun or Monster of the Week or a different Powered by the Apocalypse game, I'm going to pick the Powered by the Apocalypse. Because, like, mechanically, I think Shadowrun is really annoying.
Yeah.
That's where I draw my line. I love the game we were in, but Monster of the Week is a very nothing burger system. It's just, like, mechanically speaking, meh. My largest criticism for actually rules-like games in general is, for some fucking reason, they are not suited to play one character for a long time. And I think that's really annoying.
Yeah.
Because that's how I play. I don't have, like, a bunch of character, like, concepts. Like, I don't like the idea of switching out my characters. Like, I find that really boring as a design idea of, like, oh yeah, your character, you can play them for, like, 10 sessions, and then after that, there's nothing else. It's like, why the fuck are you deciding that for me? That's my biggest critique for the systems, because I think Blaze in the Dark does it too. So does fucking like Candle Obscura. Like I do not like that. And if they had systems where you could level up more, that granted might make it less of a rules light. That's probably why they don't do it. But like I find it frustrating. That's the part I don't like about them.
Yeah, and that's what I ran into, because the thing was, like, some of the players were like, oh yeah, I'm really evolving my character. Devin was very much into that. But for me, my idea was I wanted to play the expert. That was the whole idea. And sure, I went from new expert to like to veteran expert, but there was no other playbooks I wanted. You know, there was nothing there was no evolution that I thought fit my character better, because my character is the expert. That was like, I guess I was too true to form, but there was just no way to progress after a certain point, or at least no meaningful way to progress, because there wasn't enough options. And I mean, we played that campaign for like a pretty decent amount, but that wasn't a very long campaign.
Yeah,
And
it wasn't like a year plus, but it was moderate. Like it was, we were getting to the point pacing wise for the system that it was starting to show the cracks like that.
yeah,
Where like we ended at I think the right time for that, and also it didn't feel like we lost out narratively,
yeah, I
because it
agree.
felt like both things were ramping up in a good way.
And again, neither of us are like hardcore narrative players, so you gotta take it with a grain of salt, because I don't think either of us are really good at espousing the benefits to rules like games. But most of what I've heard, because I do watch a lot of videos of people who are like really into rules like games, is they just want to get into telling the story, which I think is fine. But for me, it's just what makes a TTRPG special is the fact that you have a narrative, you're telling a narrative that is in some ways organic, because of the simulation type effects of TTRPGs. So the less systems you have simulating things in a game, the less I feel you get the true benefit of what a TTRPG does, and get more of a the story goes because that's how we told it kind of thing, like a very forum-esque style of roleplay, where at the end of the day, you might not have expected your character to like die in that last post, but the story was just too good and you just decided to let your character die anyway, you know? Because I get it. I get the idea of like being able to tell a story and not be expect what happens out of it, because it's just based on like the flow and how everyone feels about it. But at the end of the day, kind of had a big choice in what happened to your character there. If you didn't want your character to die, if you didn't feel in that moment that it was a good time for them to do so, then they probably wouldn't have. And one of the funnest things in TTRPGs is when a player does something that's so statistically unlikely, like rolling multiple nat 20s in a row, or rolling multiple 100s in a row in Anima, for instance, where you get these really crazy moments where a player gets a one in a million shot and makes it, and it's like crazy. Or when a character is about to like coup de grace something but then fumbles in the hardest way possible, and that can also be just very interesting story.
I had that happen so much, where my boy Arthur had so many moments where he was full on dead to rights, and then he succeeded on the Hail Mary. Like, so many times that happened.
Yeah, and it's fun.
And it ruled.
You know, when Garvey died in the Astrid game, it's not like, I mean, sure, I assassinated him in the night as the GM, but like, it's not like I didn't give y'all a chance to save him. The checks were just high, and despite everyone's best efforts, but despite everyone putting everything in, they just couldn't manage it. And that was a harsh moment. That was a very like emotional moment when everyone did their best and still failed.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like in a more rules like game, depending on how everyone was feeling in that moment, I don't know if we would have had the same experience.
Yeah, it's very different. Like the ways you tell the story, because like I do think there's a level of freedom in not having everything be simulated, because there are a lot of times where, like, if you're working on something, you're doing this, and then having systems where it's like, we got to do the number for it, where it's like, I don't know, man, like it'd be interesting to play it out to see how everything goes. There are elements where I think it can sometimes get in the way, which is where I see the argument of people who feel that. I think most of the time, a lot of Rules Light fans and the most outspoken about it, the way they talk about it makes me think they just had a bad experience with like someone in a crunchy game. Where I think you had like those really lame moments of where it feels like, oh, take a step, roll acrobatics. Like that gets super annoying. I like Rules Like games, I would love it if they had more, because I am purely in that camp of I'm going to play the game the same way. I am here for the group, I'm here for the narrative, I'm here for the roleplay, I'm here to play the character. The bonus on top is do I get a fun game attached to it? Like that feels like the icing on the cake. When I get a cake and it's plain, but like I don't know, it was well made and like it feels good to eat, it's nice, but there's no icing. It's like, all right, sure, whatever. But then you play a game like Anima's the best example, where it's like, oh shit, like double decker, everything's all kitted out, it looks great, they even put my name on it, hell yeah. Like that's how it feels to me, at least.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an interesting analogy, but yeah, this is my take on TTRPGs, right? My daughter could bake me a cake, and it'll be equally meaningful, you know, whether she does it well or not. So she could make me like a very simple, very like amateur cake, and I'd be like, oh, thank you, honey, this is so great. But if she like made me the best tasting cake in the world with, you know, like all the best cream on top and like the perfect texture and everything like that, like if you ask me which of those two cakes I would want, both from my daughter, both meaningful, you know, I would take the better tasting cake, the better like cake that more went into than the one that was just filled with implied love, you know. Like they both have implied love, but one just has more in it. And that's just kind of how I feel about TTRPGs, where it's like I could have a really good narrative. Again, we played Monster of the Week. It was a really good campaign. I made one of my best characters I think I've ever played.
I love your character in that game.
But at the end of the day, I felt just kind of done with it much sooner than I would have in any other kind of game. And that's just because there was just not enough to bite into, not enough substance. And it's not about telling a story, because I can tell a story, but I would like in a game if my character is unique, not just for how I told the story, because again, I don't need help with that part. But it would be really cool if I found a really fun build that when I played the character, I'd be like, oh my god, this game is fun. This is really fun, mechanically interesting to interact with, you know. Because it's always great when you have a character who just like everything you put into them flows really well together. And you make a character like in Pathfinder 2E, one of my favorite characters that I ran was for a short oh goodness, what's it called? One of the characters we were playing with was like an old elf, and we played a flashback. There we go. We played a flashback part of his story, and I played a dwarf called Skag, who is an inventor, and he invented the Skag axe, which is a dwarven great axe slash dwarven axe musket that were combined together using inventor abilities, which is really fun. And I liked this character so much because mechanically he was so fun. He was a really simple, very like he was hard of hearing because he uses explosions all the time, and he was kind of just crass and very dwarfy in a lot of ways. But like, there's nothing more fun to me than like me using my axe as a rocket booster, because again, inventor, and then shooting a shot from the musket part that turns into a massive boulder because magic bullets, you know. And so I just had this character who was very dynamic, played very well. I had a lot of options in combat, and the combat not only like mechanically felt very fun, but also I was just it had a lot of really good tools in combat to do a lot of really fun things. And one of the funnest character builds I've ever played in Pathfinder, and for a very like shallow character. And so it's like, I loved Tobias, but to be honest, I enjoyed playing Skag more, even though Tobias was by far the better character, narratively speaking.
Yeah, like it makes a lot of sense. Cause yeah, it's fun because I feel like it's a thing that's pretty common for us in particular, where a lot of times we reach a similar conclusion, but we take a different route there. Cause like, I also feel similarly in some aspects where I'm like, there's characters I played that mechanically speaking are so fun, but then I look at this other character like personality wise, and I'm just like, I like this personality way more. But oh man, when you get the perfect marriage of it, that's when it feels great. Like,
yeah,
shout out, like, Anima hit it really well, because like mechanically speaking, two of the most fun. I want to do summoning again just to feel it again now that I'm better at the system. Like Psychic and Key, playing Arthur Thompson, Sebastian Finch at near the same time. Holy shit. Mechanically, best characters I've played. They felt the best. I've tried to reach the same peaks in other systems, haven't fully hit it. I haven't made anything like crazy mechanically different in Pathfinder because I played a wizard, and granted, very fun. I liked playing him a lot. But man, when you get that marriage of it, to at least I'll add on to my my analogy, because I think the cake analogy, you can just add so much detail to it in that way.
yeah,
Because I'll put it with an earlier point I made, where if I have a similar choice, maybe like, oh man, I'm being made this amazing cake, and there's my two options are a cake that is very simple, but you know what? I do fuck with me some chocolate cake. That sounds sick. It's got chocolate chips in it, at least. Hell yeah. And the other one, master crafted carrot cake. And I'm gonna be like, I don't like carrot cake though. I'll go with a simpler. And in my head, that's my analogy for, hey, do you want to play same group? Do you want to play Shadowrun or Monster of the Week? Like, sorry man, I just don't like carrot cake, so I'm leaning more to the game I find mechanically less interesting. Because like, my goal is the game and to have the game with people and tell like a fun story. It's just the mechanics and having the game be good are a bonus.
yeah, and you know, I mean, that was the same with my analogy. It's just like, both cakes were made by my daughter. It's just, you know, both are super meaningful. The one I would just choose more is the one that also is just the better experience overall.
No, yeah, because like, if you're gonna do something, might as well get the best out of it. Like, because it all makes sense. It's just, I think it's just fun. We reach a similar goal and a similar endpoint, just in slightly different ways. Because that's how people are. We just got like slightly different tastes in things. Because I mean, I agree. I think on a whole, like, I found over time, because I used to be like, I like the idea of rules light way more. I've realized, no, not really. It's less of that. I just like the narrative part, but I want a good game like attached to it for fun.
Yeah.
Like Monster of the Week, I found fun to play because in my head I was pretending I was playing Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
And like Resident Evil 4's rules, and that's just fully how I was playing him. So it's just like sick. It's like this video game I like in my head.
Yeah, it's a it's really funny because I'm realizing now I don't have the same kind of general problem that a lot of people have because you and Slug both kind of say like the same kind of things, where it's the people I'm playing with, you know, that's the thing I'm here to do and enjoy and all that kind of stuff. For personal play, which to be fair, is a very curated experience in general by design. For personal play, sorry, I'm messing with my lighting. I don't have a problem. I don't worry about playing in not fun groups because one, I choose everyone I play with, but two, more specifically, I'm always the GM and I mold the people I play with into my style of TTRPG players. So I don't really have a situation of playing with people that are less fun because I just turn the people I play with into people who are fun to play with.
Yeah.
Like Adventure League aside, which still I had a lot of fun because there were a lot of people we met, and we met there. I met my wife there.
Like it was great, but like man oh man, if we had that same group did some of the same things, if not had more freedom and like cut out some of the annoying people, it'd be kind of hype.
It would have been better, yeah, for sure. But that's not a thing I have a lot of control over,
No, yeah.
It's very rare that sometimes I've been invited to a group and I just don't know a lot of people, and it's not like my optimal experience, but usually I'm not running that game, so that's also a problem. I run my games, and so I get to mold the people I play with into the kind of role players I like to play with because it was just my ability to do so. It's just an interesting thing to think about the differences, and this is kind of like a key factor in TTRPGs, where obviously a lot of our conversation here, like, yeah, there's some objective facts about like blending narrative and mechanical. There's a lot of games that just don't have really any narrative implementation in their mechanics, but there's a subjective element as well where the right mix, the right style of game is going to be completely based on who you play with, what you're doing, all that kind of stuff. I know a lot of people who prefer playing D&D 5e because at the end of the day, D&D is a very straightforward game that can be played, by almost anyone, and the amount of mechanics in the game can be based on the GM's effort, and a lot of the narrative can just be based on, the players in the group. And so it's like, it's the perfect game because it's so basic of a game that like they can do anything with it.
It's the element where I bring it up often. It's just the vibe of some games I think can carry it, because yeah, I find 5th edition D&D boring as hell. However, like when I think of in my head what is like the D&D adventure, like I think of like not even just because it was the D&D game I was in for the longest, but like the way Q runs his D&D stuff is, I think, such a like iterated on format of playing the game. I think it is a way that a lot of people picture it. It's a very open, you have a world that like he's put a lot of effort in like figuring out. He has a bunch of homebrew rules that he put a lot of effort in figuring out, and it's so open. We had so many sessions where we just did nothing and talked. Like that type of game. I think there's a lot of people where like that's what they picture. And like I picture that idea of it where the vibe of I'm an adventurer, I come from nothing, I'm gonna make a name out of myself, and like we're exploring, we start low, we have spooky monster encounters, maybe we're fighting goblins in their camp, and we get and then like we have arcs where we're dealing with like, ah shit, we have this little plot line, oh fuck, after that, hey, we're going to like this player's backstory arc. Like that format of campaign is still my favorite. Because it's similar to what we did in the past with like Anima and D&D as well, where we had that kind of feeling of, oh yeah, this is the insert character arc. Here's the Rosencrantz arc. Like full on like, you know what? Hey guys, hey DMs out there. Structure your campaigns like One Piece. That's kind of the point I think I'm making. I think One Piece like pacing of like you have some fun in between bits, but you have an overall arc in each like amount of time. Maybe they last anywhere from like 3 to 8 sessions or something. Depending on how long that arc goes, but like it's a fun format. Like I love that. That vibe is so sick.
Yeah, and a lot of that mostly comes from just the characters, like the GM making a story around the character. The Rosencrantz arc was so good because we had some characters who were tied to that arc that was very, like we cared about. We had an NPC and a player who were both essentially from the same town. And there was a lot to do. There was a lot of ways characters could interact in it together. And not only that, but it was just honestly fascinating world building and fascinating like overall story that was coming together during that arc. Not to toot my own horn, but that's just the reality of what it was. We enjoyed it so much because Rosencrantz as a city and the Vitella, by grace of being the major players in the story, they were just fascinating. They were interesting. The three houses, how they were each different. House Serban versus House Rosencrantz versus House Amoros. How the players integrated into that. And then there was House Crow, but they were more like the weird guys in the backyard rather than a real house, all things considered. I was trying to see. I could have swore I recorded all of the Rosencrantz arc.
Yeah, it should be in that.
But maybe I just uploaded them as videos.
I mean, back in the day, yeah, they were videos.
I know what the problem was. They didn't used to have the live tab before.
Yep.
So
I remember downloading them for you, and then uploading them.
Yeah.
Fucking Cradle to Crypt. 5 years ago.
All right, how many, before you see, how many episodes do you think the Rosencrantz arc was?
Fucking, like, I want to say it was like 10, 9.
That's actually lower. It felt way longer to me. It was 20 episodes.
Oh, okay.
24, looks like on average 4.5 hour episodes.
Damn. Yeah, because that was what it was. It was like, I think we started at like 6 or something, or 8. But yeah, no, like I remember those so fondly. Like I like that format of game a lot. Like I really love that that open in a way where definitely isn't always like this, but it's that fun of like I'm in a tabletop world in a tabletop game, and it almost feels like again it's One Piece. I'm talking about like One Piece campaign structure where it feels like I as a character and with the party we're more or less stumbling on plot elements, and then every once in a while something important to a character comes up, and like it's just such a fun format, like to have that. It's like a fun blend between what is a very set on the rails type story, because Cradle to Crypt specifically, like we had a central threat. Granted, like just game and like timing stuff, it fell through around the end because like kind of how it went, but we had that central guiding thing, people brought together by nothing, and then over time becoming like the thing this person needed in their lives the most. And I love that vibe because it's how I approach it. I approach anybody who is like, you're making the decision to do adventuring. I think personally the decision to make that is really interesting, because essentially speaking, in a world that's full of fantasy and scary things, or also just the idea of getting past level 1, I always picture as a very high mortality rate. So you're basically saying, man, I love this new job of mine called suicide. Like, and what is bringing a person to make that choice, I find, is like the first interesting question you have to think about your character. It's something I'm approaching with Dr. Hawthorne, because I've hinted it a good few times, but I think it's like an interesting dichotomy to have for a character who believes he is consigned to death. It just depends when, but by the way he acts, I think it's clear he has a genuine fear of it. It is that mix of death will come, but when it stares me in the face, I will do anything to survive. But like he views with his curse, I'm either going to die randomly in my sleep, randomly through like happenstance, or I will die doing this dangerous shit to try to get out of it. one of those sounds like a better option. And like
Yeah.
that's what's fun about it. Like I love that element when it comes to like narrative games.
Yeah. And I'm really happy with the current anime game because Empire's Fall is very much everyone starts off as relatively normal people, and as time goes on, you guys are going to be pressured more and more and more to just essentially become adventurers, you know, like uh one of the characters or two of the characters, who knows, are currently being targeted by an assassin. And that's like, what do you do in that situation, especially when they can do some pretty like insane feats apparently, for how the last assassination attempt went.
Oh yeah.
One of the characters is like, hey, there's something going on, maybe like a past life, maybe something's going on with you. There's some ruins outside the city that might be tied to this. Too bad we're right in the middle of the Wild March, where, you know, beasts are going crazy outside the walls, and traveling outside of the cities is almost a death sentence. Too bad he's just a little college kid, you know. It's like, your answers are out there, you just might have to risk it. And and there's a lot of other things that are compounding together. We're not quite that far in the campaign, but it's very, very likely that by even not too much further in the campaign, everyone is going to be turned into adventurers slash, you know, like anime characters, where you just don't live a normal life anymore, and you're out doing crazy things that are very lethal and very like potentially dangerous, because you kind of have to. And I like the slow start, though actually this is gonna be a huge tangent, so sorry for anyone who's super interested in the idea of mixing mechanics and narrative, because I'm curious. So Alex, you've been recently talking about how you've kind of wanted to go back and do like the standard D&D adventure. Kind of been having that craving for that. What exactly is entailed in that? Like, what makes you crave for that particular style of game?
I think it is purely there is a tangible sense of adventure in that. It is the idea, it's also like it's stories I like to follow a lot more. It is that very mobile story where granted they can be in literally any setting. It just depends how big or small you want to say mobile is. But like there's an element that I find interesting to the plot structures that are we are experiencing a lot of things. We are stories are coming to us. Maybe we drop some plot hooks, but like we find others. It is the story of like we are on our journey to do a thing, and there are a lot of roses on the way that we're stopping to smell. I think that is the way to say that vibe. Because I don't think I would have had the words for it before seeing through One Piece, where it's like it's there. I think there's a reason that story has gone on so long and is still as popular as it is. It is a sense of adventure that like you are undertaking that is really fun.
Yeah. So are you thinking more like a vagabond style game, like not staying in one place too long, or is it like
No. Oh no, like it's not based on the setting. Because like you could easily do, and I think we easily can have that similar feel in one city. Like we're building up to that. There's a lot of things going on, and it's just the difference of when you are running and like playing into your space, where it's like, yeah, we're in a city. Cities are big, like huge, and so like in practice, does your city feel big? Is there a lot of stuff where it's like the equivalent of I am in a D&D fantasy setting and I'm traveling this country? Because like I feel like you can pack in density really well in like a city setting. So it's not like literally the mobility of it. It is just there is a sense of adventure in a way that like the narrative is set up in shit is happening and like falling on you. It is that narrative structure of like, oh man, this problem has just happened, if only some heroes could figure it out. It's very gamey and like it's very like clearly fantasy. But it is fun to have that like we're entering these people's lives and like leaving it for the better. We're solving this plot. It's like uh I'm literally thinking of Grim Survival. We came across a cult town in the swamp and I shot a fake Jesus figure in the asshole. Like,
Yeah.
that's a plot we stumbled into. And then stuck in, then like the idea of stumbling into story is something I really enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. It's a very interesting idea. Funny enough, you're talking about why One Piece has been going on forever. You want to know the real reason why One Piece has been able to go on like it has?
Uh, I mean, there's the cynical reasons and then the broader reasons of like, I credit the character writing to be why, and then otherwise it's money. It makes so much money, so they can. It's a better idea to keep it long running because it has a format that lends itself well to running long.
Sure. Character writing is a big part of it, but not the way I think you might think it is. So
I'm curious.
the reason why One Piece has been able to run as long as it has is not only just because Oda's just really good at like making interesting arcs that are full of adventure, like you said. It's very D&D actually, but I think the more D&D part, the Straw Hats themselves don't go through a lot of character growth despite the sheer amount of stuff they do. There's
like, I would say the most character growth is like before and then directly after the time skip. Like, when I think of okay, the character arcs that are in One Piece, I think of Usopp becoming less of a coward. I think of Zoro,
which
feeling
he's still
1%.
very much a coward even now.
Oh, still, but I think he channels it differently, in more of like he feels more like he's more confident to be strategic, but also his only skill is at range. So like, I think of Zoro feeling 1% of Luffy's pain from Kuma. That's it, Kuma.
Yeah.
Like that element where after that point, Zoro becomes like a lot more stoic samurai, and like his promises of like he's never gonna fall, he's never gonna lose a fight again. Like that's largely it. Actually, there's not a lot other character growth, but like characters are fun, even though like they're static. Yeah, they're I think there's a lot of strength in having just you have these arcs that are all changing, but the characters remain these like anchor points to keep you in.
Yeah, it's the reason why One Piece gets to work the way it does is because the the idea of the story is not character driven. Like Luffy wanting to be king of the pirates is more just like an excuse for them not to give up and less about any like ambition. And we found out in the last like few years that it's not even that Luffy wants to be king of the pirates. Luffy wants to do something else, but he needs to be king of the pirates first, which feels kind of like weird to add on, because him being just wanting to be king of the pirates kind of felt like enough. But
he feels like the character that is it's the point that I think is a great summary of his character that people miss of it was before, what's that city called? It's the one like where that one guy the guy who served on Roger's ship, who's really good with hockey.
that
Where you meet
Shanks?
him. No, it was he's got like white hair, he's old, there's a funny gif of him crying.
You mean Rayleigh?
That's it. Yeah, him. It's on that island, where there's a part where Luffy is told like, "Hey, do you want to know like this information?" Like the crew is like, "Hey, I can just tell you what's past like this area of the scary part of the Grand Line. I can tell you all this." And like Usopp and crew are like, "Oh shit, hell yeah, intel!" And then Luffy snaps at them like, "What's the point of doing this then?
Yeah.
You're just gonna tell me all of it. Then why would I do it in the first place?" And like that is a motivation enough. Like I like that motivation of like, I'm here because I'm very driven to have like essentially, I want to have the greatest adventure possible to overpass the guy who did everything in life. And like, I love that motivation.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why like Luffy having like some
It's weird.
ulterior reason for becoming king of the pirates seems really weird.
Yeah, I'm not as into that.
In Sabaody is the island they were on.
That's it. Okay.
But yeah, so that's why One Piece gets to exist, and it's very D&D in a way, because there's a lot of games where the player characters emotionally or even narratively don't really change much over the course of an entire adventure. It's just they get kind of stronger as they go, and that's about it. And that's kind of like, especially if you play like adventure modules and stuff like that. Adventure modules are so not character driven, so that's the exact experience of it. And then, you know, obviously because Oda's just really good at making really fun arcs, that like Whole Keiki Island is supposed to be Sanji's arc, but if we're gonna be really honest here, he didn't really even go through any real character arc. He just kind of had his chance to like confront his past of being a Vinsmoke, and and that's it. Like, he almost got married, and he that kind of has affected him, but he's still kind of a creep still. And like the biggest thing that's changed about Sanji is that he has determined that he hates being a Vinsmoke, and now he has more cyborg like powers, which, you know, we haven't really even got that far into. But like Wano was more about like world lore than it was about any character specifically. It was more about like the side characters, like Kinemon and the kid.
Also taking the longest amount of time possible to get to the final fight. Really felt like that. But it's fun. It is funny. It's like, I'm thinking about it because I think a good example of a story that is a similar genre, obviously, that's trying to do that but failed, in my opinion, is fucking Dragon Ball. I don't think Dragon Ball could go on forever, and like there's a lot of reasons for it. Like I like Dragon Ball a lot. Dragon Ball Super is kind of dog water. Like, it's got some fun parts in it. Like, I really enjoy the when they introduce the other universe with like the Destroyer, Champa, and like that fight, largely because I think Hit is probably one of the coolest characters to come out of Super. But like, it's a series that I don't think can go on as long because that absolute staticness kind of gets really boring. Like, it's really just the scale keeps increasing, and eventually it can't go higher. There's only so many ways of like universe threat, multiverse threat that can really exist at a time. But like, consigning myself to a world where I get less like Dragon Ball Super Broly, which is a fantastic movie. I love that one like a lot. Dragon Ball Superhero, which is a really good story. I like it a lot. I would like more Dragon Ball stuff, but I don't think the story can go on forever. Unlike One Piece, where eventually it should have an ending. And it sounds like we're much closer to it. But like, there's different strength each series play off of each other.
Yeah, well, we're about to enter the last arc of One Piece. Right after Elbaf. So
yeah, well, it's gonna be crazy to have like an ending for this dang series.
It is
been active longer than I've been alive.
But so here's the thing, though, right? They're not the same because the character goals are, well, I mean, like, they're kind of similar in some ways, but not really. So Goku's whole like character goal is to be the strongest. That's like his thing.
Yeah, because he's like personally interested in always being the better form of himself, and he enjoys the process, and like he enjoys the fight. I mean, that's literally the reason why almost every bad event happens in Dragon Ball, is because the characters want to test themselves at like the full extent.
Yeah.
yeah, like Goku though, he doesn't have a target. That's the thing. Luffy has a thing he's pointing at. It's like, I'm gonna become the best possible. Over there is where I can do it. Goku is just like, I don't know, man. I got to farm now. Like, I just gotta chill on Earth until a scary thing comes.
See, no, so here's the thing. It's not even necessarily about like the types of goals they have or anything like that. It's the problem is Goku achieves his goal in almost every arc.
He does.
And then the universe has to push the goal post further and further back. What would be more similar is if Luffy's goal was be king of the pirates, and that involved being the top pirate in a particular region. And then it's just like he's the king of the pirates of this region, and it's like, oh, but there's a bigger region, so we have to go and be king of the pirates there and then there. That would feel worse because it would feel like the goalposts keep moving.
Yeah, it's like the goalpost is far off and the goalpost has changed. They're very different things. One of them is more narratively interesting, because yeah, it is just kind of that feeling of the universe will clap back because Goku did it, and like, yeah, I think they're both of them lend themselves differently to a mobility of story, because Dragon Ball probably could have gone on a little longer, probably stronger, if straight up Gohan became the protag, but that wasn't gonna happen.
Well, Dragon Ball would have been better if it kind of had like the cultivator thing, or the Shansha thing of like an expanding universe where like you become the strongest of like your region, then the country, then the world, then you realize that your world is actually a small world in a universe of many big worlds, you know. But like the thing is like in Dragon Ball they did it the wrong way, where Goku in Dragon Ball Z, which is kind of like the first arc of Goku really like pursuing the path of being the strongest. He's always like wanted to be strong in Dragon Ball proper, but that wasn't really like the main goal of it. He was just kind of going around and doing things and getting caught up in adventures and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like a Journey to the West allegory that it was trying to be.
Yeah,
but also very goofy and funny.
Yeah, Dragon Ball Z is kind of like where he was like starting to pursue the quest of being the strongest, and he went and fought the strongest being in the universe in like essentially the first major it's not one arc but major arcs kind of culminated in the Frieza arc, because the Saiyans came to Earth and he's like, oh, there's these people who are really strong, and so you know these Saiyans are coming to destroy the world, I gotta get strong enough to beat those guys. And then after the Saiyan arc it was all right, there's we found a spaceship and we can follow it wherever it goes, and so they went to Namek, and then they started the Frieza arc, and Frieza was canonically the strongest character in the universe, the whole universe at that time. So
yeah, and then for some reason on Earth brewing was a creature even stronger. Granted, the explanation is that they got some DNA from Frieza because he came to Earth.
Yeah.
And like, but like, yeah, who knew that in a lab cooking up, there were a bunch of androids and cyber people that were becoming like stronger than everyone else. And then, oh hey, there's a bubblegum demon. You know what? That one's fair. I think that was a fair like scaling. And then just the next time we see it being like, all right, by the way, there's a god of destruction that can just literally destroy anything, and he's the strongest thing ever. Even Frieza's scared of him. It's like, oh, fuck, okay, I guess.
Yeah, and you know what? He's not even really the real target of Goku's next pursuit.
It's Frieza again, because he comes to Earth.
Yeah, and also because he comes to Earth. So yeah, the problem with Dragon Ball is Dragon Ball's fun, but it's not a really good, like, adventure story, because there's not a lot of adventuring. It's just various fighting arcs just tied together.
I think it is the bad form of stumbling on the plot, because I think there is a difference between characters who are literally like doing nothing. Like the training they're doing in between arcs feels like aimless and pointless.
Yeah.
And then there's a difference between that and then, oh no, a thing came to Earth, whoa, versus all right guys, we completed this arc, let's go to the next adventure, let's head to this location and see what's going on, let's get invested. Like, there's a difference there.
Yeah. And so, like, yeah, One Piece is kind of more like the standard D&D adventure. Like, they just kind of go wherever the story tells them to go to next, and they get into various shenanigans along the way. And it's an interesting idea to vibe with it, and I think that just really speaks to the fact that you've had some really good tabletop experience that made those kind of things really fun.
Yeah. Like, that is the vibe I think of when I think of like all of the games. Like, most of the games we've done, like, I kind of feel like fall into that bracket. Anima specifically, I think, because Anima lends itself to it really well.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like a setting that's perfect for like, let's explore. But like, when you think of it, the areas we've explored in Anima are really like not crazy for each thing. Like, we don't go all over. The most far traveled we were was in the fucking Astrid game, like where we really went far each time. We took ships everywhere. But like, even those games where it's like we didn't make like a crazy amount of travel progress. It's just the world's so big.
Yeah, I mean, Dark Survival, literally, you guys went like kind of along the north side. You went from Dwanholf to Moth.
Yeah,
which is
like, that's not that far.
They're like right next to each other.
And like, we did a bunch of shit in between. Like,
yeah,
it is that level where it's the raw sense of adventure, where for Anima specifically in this instance for us, it is that moment of campaign over. And one of the first questions you asked us about Cradle to Crypt was, what region do you guys think looks fun? Yeah. And like, that is a choice we can make, is what region that none of us have seen in game played out do we want to see played out? And so it's bit by bit fleshing things out. And there is a special sense of wonder and adventure in that. And I mean, it's the bit I'm excited for when it comes to this game we're doing currently, because like, when we start being able to go outside the city will be fun. Like, when we start figuring out what the scary things are, because I imagine there's going to be some scary threats, fun stuff. But like, the sense of adventure that I feel like we can hit in this would be so sick. Of if we can look back on this and have, it would be like my ideal like style. So granted, it's just my own take of looking back on it, being like, oh, okay, we could separate this long game, very narrative game, into chunks of like what we were doing in the story, and like picture like, oh yeah, this big bad guy we dealt with, super sick. 'Cause I loved the big bad threat in Rosencrantz. I liked the fucking essentially the Antichrist, like fake second coming in the swamp, like dealing with the terrifying thing in Sebastian's backstory arc where he's dealing with the big spooky monster in the research facility. So a lot of those elements where it's like, man, or the Unraveler as a threat.
Yeah.
Like, the big bads. Like, I'm excited for like that, because it's always so fun. It's fun to see like the big bad and the target, and you work and work and work, and then boom, let's kick its ass. And Anima lends itself really well to that, largely because a lot of the shit in it is already anime inspired in general. So an anime styled like, I guess, plot structure, it feels natural. But it is something I just enjoy. I enjoy that like wonder, sense of adventure.
Yeah, I think also Anima's just a funner game to like augment characters. I can give more things in Anima that feel more impactful. Pathfinder is actually a ridiculously hard game to like give players things, because you know, if it's going to be a weapon, it has to be the weapon the player wants to use for its various like specific benefits. Like, that's kind of one of the bad things about Pathfinder's weapon system is, yeah, every weapon that you choose matters, but also whenever you find a magic weapon, if it's not the kind of weapon you want to use, you're like, oh, but I built myself around having a trip weapon, and now this isn't a trip weapon. It can be really bad. And as well, the game's math is just so like tightly wound together that the only thing you can really give players are items that give you like once per day spell like abilities and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's super limited in that regard. I like the system you're working with when it comes to anima of the work you put in means that you can get some free stat bumps and like just free secondary abilities. I like that a lot. It gives some fun progression instead of oh man, I slept on it and now I'm 20 points better in the skill. I think it's more fun to like work on it as it goes on. Here's another thought I immediately had about this type of campaign structure I'm talking about. One of the really fun things I'm thinking on is you have these arcs. You have this stuff where like every session we're dealing with some bullshit. We're going through it. One of the coolest parts of that structure is the in-between arc moments. The moments where your characters get that chance to breathe.
Yeah.
That's always fun. Those are like amazing sessions because it's just the let's unpack some shit we learned. Let's like do some minor characterization. That's the hey, what's your favorite suite? Like let's go to this random thing in a town we just visited. Like those moments. And like that's what it feels like we're on right now. We're in the like that breathing space and things are going to start constricting over time. And like once they start going bam 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 like bullshit's happening constantly. Then when we have those sessions of like rest period basically, it's going to feel pretty fun and like man, remember when we had this? Remember when we had like normal lives?
Yeah. That's another thing that some storytellers don't do right. Of give your narrative some time to breathe in times, because like it's really hard to get into a book where everything feels like it's constantly in peril from chapter to chapter to chapter to chapter with like no breathing room. Like it can be really stressful when you read a whole book and you're just like on edge the entire time, when you can have those moments of just like letting the characters breathe. Like Mistborn Era 2 had a pretty decent mix in most of the books of there's like some really bad stuff happening, but then you get these moments where the characters kind of like, okay, we need to go over what evidence we have, we need to talk about some things, we need to do whatever, and like, all right, now back to action, back to combat, back to doing all these kinds of things. All right, now a little bit of breathing room. Like I remember in the fourth book, I think, of Mistborn Era 2, the one where they meet the Malwish for the first time.
Oh, that is my favorite one. That's book 3 of Era 2.
Book 3.
Yeah.
Like after going through the compounds with the I forget what that organization was called.
No, it wasn't the Ghost Bloods.
Wasn't the Ghost Bloods.
Easily figure that out.
Anyway, with the Malwish skyship in it.
Yeah.
That was like a huge, like super stressful thing. Like all the characters were doing things, they were in a lot of pressure, and then they get in the Malwish like pod to fly off to the next part. But there was just a good section of the next chapter of just them kind of like talking in the ship and going over things, and like it created a chance of like breathing room. Like Wax was meeting his sister finally, and talking about everything that happened. And
yeah, the set is the group.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Like there's a strength to it, like because there's also like when I'm thinking of books I've read where I really enjoyed the pacing, how it was paced. I think the book overall, all right. Fucking Dresden Files book 2, I love the pacing because I think there's a lot of strength in having your story because it needs that time to breathe. And if you're not going to give a time to breathe, you need to be very strategic on it, because then what you have to aim for is that exhale at the end. Like you need that, because I love how that book, like the moment the big scary werewolf happens in that book, Dresden, when he's like arrested, essentially, and then shot. I
Yeah.
love how it just goes like higher, higher, higher of him. Like he doesn't get a break. He's just struggling, literally limping to like the next thing bullshit he has to do. The most he gets is the drive to the next thing. Is that's his moment to breathe. Like it feels stressful for him, and he's going through it and having to figure out on the fly how to deal with this problem. And then right once he does it, he successfully kills the big scary werewolf, and you have that, oh boy, like that is also good. You just need to have the strategy of like when do you pace it, because the exhale needs to happen, because people can't hold their breath for like forever. It's like essentially the overall structure. It can't just be thing. You need in between bits.
Yeah. And yeah, so I guess to round things up as we're kind of at the end here and we need to get going. The more tabletops, I think, need to think about integrating narrative into their mechanical flow. Make more mechanical things happen based on contextual things happening in the story is, I think, the best advice I can give. Like, when the players do something, then something mechanical happens, rather than, all right, here's a mechanic, let the players tell a story around that mechanic. Because then, you know, the only difference between that mechanic just strictly becomes how good they are at telling the story. Where when you inverse it, if you have a mechanic that's based on the character's, you know, contextual actions, it's still, yeah, the mechanics are based on what the character, how the character tells the story, but now it's necessitated. The character needs to tell a story for the mechanic to happen, rather than the mechanic will happen either way, and the character gets to dress it up however they want, you know? Now we have a thing where literally the game in question that we're playing is reacting to the story we're trying to tell, which feels like the TTRPG thing. That, you know, that's kind of like the point.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just the bit. It also helps that it's going to a system that a lot of us are experienced in, and like know how to do some fun stuff. And it's gonna be sick getting full hog into it, because the bit I will love in the future, years down the line, the idea of like returning to like that overarching story we were working on, building up for Anima on Gaia. Like,
Yeah.
oh man, because I love Gaia. Like, I think it's a fun setting. I love like your version of Gaia a lot, and I want to see more of it. I want to see how it happens. If like, especially because we're gonna bring new people into this world, have to even like, yeah, this is taking place in basically Act 1 of like the overall plot, or like Act 2 of it. Totally fine. But I think an ending bit, it can be the sickest in our old age. The sickest fucking, all right, here's the Infinity War Endgame moment, and like a sick send off to the large plot.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm hyped about. That's my shit. I think that's the strength of tabletop, is those ideas of, yeah, we're playing this like living world, and all these characters are sharing it together. And I love that. I love seeing the impact on a world after a game. It's so fun.
Yeah. But yeah. So that's gonna be it for us today. Alex, you want to leave us off with anything before we head out?
Yeah, it might take a bit. I'm just not have the energy, mental energy to do videos right now. I'm busy with work and other shit. But down the line, if you want lore content, it's channel Glue Boy. Probably going to be something on Mage the Ascension in like next month. But yeah, go sub, go watch some fun lore videos.
As for me, unfortunately, my mother's leaving town today, so probably won't get a chance to make a video for a little bit longer. But in some good news, things are going back to normal around here. So if we can get into a rhythm of normalcy, then maybe I can take some time away from video games and de-stressing to actually make content, you know, despite my mom not being here to kind of pick up some of the slack. It's just the hardest part is just baby's literally a 24-hour thing. I was literally up until 6:30 this morning before I got to sleep before
Yeah.
stream. So I'm working off of 5 hours of sleep, and I'm gonna go play some Code Vein too. But eventually, like, I want to make some more Fabula Ultimate content. I want to finish up on all the stuff in Lancer currently. I gotta get ready for some of the Pathfinder stuff coming out this year, because we have the Necromancer and the Runesmith coming out this year.
Yeah.
Really fun. So stay tuned. I will end up talking about these things, but with that, I guess we'll go ahead and say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.